What do you make of the government's plan to ban antisocial yobs from town centre? The number's at 0207 862 2222. Do get in touch because I'd love to know what you think. Now, do you think it'll work? As part of the government's new beefed-up crime and policing bill, they're planning to introduce something called respect orders, which could give police and councils new powers to ban people who persistently cause disruption from town centres, high streets, residential areas and green spaces where they've been behaving badly. Breaching such an order would be a criminal offence, which means that antisocial people could face prison sentences for up to 2 years. Now, all of this is part of a wider crackdown on crime. So let's just take a look at some of the other powers the government will be giving the police as part of this. And we've got them here. So people who are persistently antisocial could be banned from town centres or high streets. Now, the thing about that is that sort of already existed as part of the old ASBOs, which were replaced. That would mean that you'll have an area that you're excluded from. The next one, I have to say, is new and it's big. Police will have the power to enter and search homes from stolen phones without a warrant. Now, just to be clear what that means in law, they can locate them using technology to trace the phones. In the past, to go into somebody's home, you'd actually need a warrant. That's part of the Police and Criminal Evidence Act, and it's been around for, well, years, over sort of close to 40, 50 years. This is a change because it would mean that if that phone is tracked in somebody's house, even without going effectively to a court saying, I need to go into that house, you can go into that house. Now, bearing in mind the upsurge in mobile phones being stolen, I suspect a lot of you at home are going to be thinking that's a rather good thing. They'll also be able to seize e-bikes or scooters without warning because a number of them are being used antisocially. Also, they're often used to commit crime. Online retailers will be forced to alert the police to the suspicious sale of knives. Again, a massive spike in young people and most especially young people involved in stabbing and knife crime. And this is also something as part of these respect orders. It makes drink spiking an offence separate to the current assault laws. Now, our Home Secretary, Yvette Cooper, claims it'll help Labour to take back the streets and restore faith in the law. But critics say that these respect orders are just ASBOs for adults. The antisocial behaviour orders, they were scrapped in 2014 because they were considered ineffective. They didn't work. So what do you think? Do you trust the government to get in touch on this? Or do you have concerns that we just don't have the manpower to police it? Mike, the police at the moment, some people would ask, are not doing a very good job. You can't really get them in some of the forces to go and visit your house if you've been burgled. What do you think of this? Is it a good thing?
Well, it's got to be a good thing if it's enforced. We all want more law and order on the streets. But I think it's a load of old flannel because we don't see police officers on the streets. How on earth are they going to enforce law and order on the streets when they're not there? Shoplifting is an epidemic because somebody who's shoplifting knows they can already take up to 200 quid. If they take more than that, dash out onto the pavement, there's not a police officer there. Until we get policemen on the streets, instead of sending them round to people's houses to knock on their door and say, we've seen a tweet that you put out and we're not very happy with it, we've got to get the officers back on the streets.
You know, Suzy, you come from a working class community. In due course, who knows, you may be representing one. You know, there are a very few number of people in communities that create a vast amount of problems for everybody else living peacefully. Do you think these are a good idea?
I think they are a good idea. Look, it's really, really important. There are so many people's lives that are massively, detrimentally affected by this kind of behaviour, antisocial behaviour. This is a top priority for voters, for people, and this should be a top priority for a Labour government. I'm really glad Yvette Cooper is bringing this in. Antisocial behaviour went up under the Tories, and it is absolutely right that we, you know, I'm not saying this is going to be the full answer because I worked in youth work for years. You have got to have good youth workers, you've got to have mentors, you've got to have training programs, you've got to have apprenticeships.
And you might also say that alerting people when people are buying knives is one good thing that's added as part of these respect rules.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but
Let's
Suzy,
go, wait a second, let's go to Shropshire and to hear what Steve has to say. Steve, a respect order, do you think that's going to make a difference?
Hi, good morning, Mr. Rinder. Great to speak to you and your panel there. I think that possibly might, but my main point would be, to be brutally honest with you, I've got in front of me, I kept this paper cutting. This was in October 2022. My local town set up a CCTV suite, manned 24/7 a day. It's got more than 700 cameras in my towns. We'll sort of monitor. What I'm saying is, in the towns that I know, where people do sort of sit on benches and drink, etc., have a bit of a party, they can be monitored 24/7 from these cameras, where normally the PCSOs or police might just move them on to outlying areas. And again, my general area. Am I speaking too quick, by the way?
No, it's all right. You were saying, just to be clear, you've got CCTV all over the place. Has that made a difference to the town? When they added that CCTV, did it reduce crime? And that's the question. What everybody agrees on is that we want to reduce crime, we want to keep young people safe, and we want to keep most law-abiding people able to go to work and live well and safely in their houses.
I totally agree with that. That's like really a given for most people, because most people do just go about their daily business. It's like, I agree with what Mike said there. Is it Mike on your panel?
Yeah.
He's a great journalist, by the way. I don't know the guy, but he comes across, I like the way he speaks. Generally, people like PCSOs, that's a given. There should be more PCSOs. Like, again, in my town, I think there's 4 in the local parish council on the wall there.
Right.
Getting in touch. But you never see them. I'm not being negative when I say that. They never seem to be on patrol.
So
like
your point, sorry to talk over you, Steve, but I have to say, I mean, I think that you are echoing what a lot of people are saying, is it's all very well to have these orders in place, but unless you've got the money for policing, exactly like Mike is saying, they're pretty meaningless. Part of the reason that the ASBOs necessarily failed is because there were young people that walking around going, I've got an ASBO as a badge of honour, and there were insufficient police officers to prevent people with ASBOs in the first place from, getting arrested. And then there was insufficient time in court to deal with these people as well. There's not enough just to have the orders in place. You have to be able to police them. Thank you for calling, Steve. And I hope that your town continues to stay safe. We're going to go over to Buckinghamshire now. Carl, you're there. Do you want to give anybody in Buckinghamshire a respect order? I don't know about Buckinghamshire. My, I suppose, instinct is that everybody's very respectful there.
Yes, you're right. They are respectful, but you get some people who on a Saturday night will go out and sort of have a good time and cause problems. I mean, if you're going to arrest everyone, and I mean, Newcastle would be dead on a Saturday night if you arrested everyone. So the fact is that...
Hang on, now. I mean, there are other rowdy parts of the UK, I believe.
Yes.
You're not committing a crime just by going out and having a good old
flashing your boobs and pulling your pants down. I think that's pretty uncivilized behaviour.
You'd live in a... Well, I can't imagine much of that goes on in Buckinghamshire, but you don't arrest people for that.
Well, I've looked for it on a Saturday night and found nothing.
Right, I see. Well, listen, we all have our different versions of respect. Some people's versions of respect is a very happy Saturday night. But thanks for calling, Carl. Over to Lancashire, and it's you, Sam.
Yeah, morning, everyone. So I've been a victim of unruly behaviour, and I live in a little village. And unfortunately, slapping a respect order on or banning antisocial behaviour from the town won't work, because they'll just move on to the next one and the next one. We've got kids coming from, neighbouring villages into our town to cause trouble. I mean, I've 2 13-year-olds destroyed my Halloween display in Ormskirk. And when I spoke to the police, we caught them on ring, you name it. Right. When I spoke to the police, they said, they're under 18, they won't get prosecuted. So I was like, okay, so there's no deterrent. You want to give them a slap on the wrist. What we're doing is because there's no real big punishment to kids under 18, we are creating a society of sociopaths, because they're walking in going, I'm under 18, I can do what I want. And and it's carrying on. I mean, we had a stabbing
that's terrible.
3 years ago.
Sam, just to be clear, Sam, just to be clear, I mean, that's terrible what you just referred to. One of the things here is that there's going to be alerts when people buy knives. Also, this applies to not just young people, but adults. And the question is, I guess, whether they're going to work and make a meaningful difference. But now, more of your calls on the government's plans to ban antisocial yobs from town centres. Is it a good idea, or do you worry about how they'll actually police it? The number is 0207 862 2222. That's the number you'll need. I'd love your thoughts on this. Now, panel, these respect orders aren't just aimed at youths, but some of our callers have been specifically talking about young people causing problems. Now, why do you think that is? Suzy, you were talking about working with young people for 2 decades.
Well, yeah, the reason for that is because actually it's a high number of young people that do cause antisocial behaviour, but there are links there between things like boredom, things like poverty, things like, they've not done so well in school. Now, these aren't excuses, but we have to, understand the problem. And the point is these are going to be powerful, these increased powers, but we also do need to have, I worked in youth work. I saw young people deterred from crime and lives turn around. I saw a kid that was engaged in mugging people become a maths teacher. Miracle, absolute miracle, completely possible.
What was the secret sauce? What made a difference?
The secret sauce, okay, for me, the secret sauce is they don't have role models. Mum, dad, this kid had no mum or dad, literally, And so we became that role model. We built that relationship. We became that person in their lives that loved them, respected them, built that relationship with them. So then that respect came back. Oh, Suzy says I should behave myself. Suzy says I should do that. I had a kid take a bike back to a police station after he robbed it because he was like Suzy said. And you build that relationship with them, but also you show them you've got potential, you've got a future, and you've got to give them those opportunities.
Mike, that's a happy story, but in the meantime...
It's a very happy story, but Suzy, you've got an ambition to become an MP in London, am I right?
Yes.
Would you support stop and search? Because for me, stop and search is one of the biggest issues that could cut down on crime on the streets. The original question was yobos in town centres. Would you support that?
And I'm going to say, yes, I would.
Right,
I
good.
absolutely would. I'm sorry, but I do support that. I've worked with kids that have been stabbed. I've worked with kids that have carried knives. We can bring that down. We can tackle that problem. We can eradicate knife crime with the right. And it is.
It's an interesting thing about stop and search. Yeah, a lot of friends, obviously, similarly, that work in communities say that the poorest and the most ethnically diverse are often the ones that are most anxious for more stop and search, albeit done with care.
Because they become the victims.
Done with care, sensitivity and training. Heather, in Hampshire, yobos in town centres, what's your view? Are you delighted that you can break into somebody's house, as they would say under the current law, and go, you've got a mobile phone that's been nicked? What do you think?
I think you're completely helpless in those circumstances. I do think the old-fashioned way might be worth trying, where simply stocks. They used to have stocks in Brading Bull Ring, and anybody who'd been very naughty would be put in the stocks, obviously guarded, so nothing could happen to them.
Just to be clear, I'm a little bit... Heather, just to say, let me tell you, when I woke up this morning to come and sit in for Jeremy Vine, I did not think that I was going to get a caller saying, bring back the Elizabethan stocks. It's a surprise to me. So just to be clear, you would like public shaming in some way, somebody held inward and people to throw fruit at them?
No, just a little bit of social media, a little bit of ridicule. It might make them squirm a little bit, and it might stop them doing it again.
So not so much stocks as actually what we need more of, Heather, is social shaming. Identify people and call them out. We could do it without necessarily having to resort to what was happening in the 16th century. We've got current tools to put people in the social media stocks. That's quite an interesting thing. I'm going to let you ponder on that, Mike, for a second, because it's a surprise to me. But listen, I suspect there'll be people out there who'll be standing up their televisions and giving Heather a standing ovation. Denise in Berkshire, do you want to put people in the stocks?
Well, certainly not. I think we've got to accept that children under 18 very often aren't accountable. They think it's clever to go and cause mayhem. I mean, I've got a cousin who works in a local grocer's, and she's told by her employer not to, if somebody's stealing, not to stop them because of the health and safety, and it'll come back on the shop. But my son was a police officer here. He's now in New Zealand. He always said that the police are more accountable than the criminal. And there's so much paperwork now for them. And I think we've got to stop talking about under 18, because a lot of the people that are causing trouble are under 18. And I think there has to be, there has to be some punishment or some realisation that what they're doing, because a lot of them are just showing off to each other.
So it's not enough about having a respect order. There has to be a serious punishment. There has to be some sort of deterrent as well. And to have that deterrent, you need, the infrastructure in place. Police, prisons, etc. Denise, thanks for calling. I'm going to go to Suffolk now, and it's you, Lynn. Would you be pleased if there was a respect order available in your community?
No, I wouldn't, Rob. My view, I thought, had been taken by Heather when she first rang up after the break, and she said, reintroduce the stocks. My view is that the expense, the disruption to the police, policing it, the effectiveness and so on, wouldn't work. I think the stocks is an admirable idea. It's quick, it's fast, it's painless, it's instant. If it goes onto social media, it could be relentless and follow them around for the rest of their life. But a quick, sharp shock of having some unpleasant but soft fruit and vegetables thrown at them in a public place, they wouldn't do it again. It's as simple as that. And they wouldn't be hounded on social media. I think it's ideal.
You believe that...
Yeah.
Well, Mike, I'm going to put it to you because...
Think of the money they'd save, Rob.
I hear you. Listen, it turns out there's a lot of people who, shockingly to me, but, it's not my view. There are people out there that clearly believe that we've missed a trick in the last 400 years.
Well, look, I support most of what Lynn's saying, except the practicality of having stocks is zero. We just wouldn't do it. And on the earlier caller who said people should be shamed, the problem is, because social standards have slipped so badly over the last couple of decades, a lot of people don't have shame. They literally don't. They didn't have shame getting an ASBO. They wouldn't have any shame getting one of these supervision orders. It simply won't work unless you put police on the
Suzy, can I ask you
streets.
about that? Because that was one of the issues with the ASBOs, was that young people that were causing most of the problems, that were, perhaps really at the epicentre of creating a lot of the crime, it became almost like a badge of honour. I've got an ASBO. And what people are saying, I'm going to perhaps move away from the idea of stocks, is that actually what you need is to shame people into good behaviour. You've worked with kids. Does shame work?
Shame may work in certain situations, but obviously what is being said is not going to happen. We're not going to bring out the stocks. But I think this is important, and we have to think more creatively here. But I mean, the other thing that the government are saying is about forcing them to take alcohol and anger management courses. And there's that thing of, if you speed, you take one of those tests, don't you? And actually those tests can be very effective and well delivered. And I think there's got to be deterrent, but there's also got to be the preventative measures. And I also think things like this are important, like compulsory courses. And so, I'm not saying this is...
They wouldn't go to them, Suzy. They just wouldn't go and attend them.
Well, I think there are ways of getting them to attend them. I think there will be ways of getting them to attend them. But the preventative stuff is important because, as I say, I've seen it work, but it's got to be both and.
Well, we'll see what happens when these and if these are introduced as part of the bill. Thank you for all your calls on this.